Hi, everyone. We talk a lot about listening to our bodies, but what do you do when your body goes into full shutdown mode before you even realize what's happening? That's exactly what happened to my guest today, whose body says no moment was so severe that he lost the use of both of his arms, leaving his wife to feed him, dress him, and handle even the most basic tasks. If you're tuning in for the first time, I'm Raelan Agle, and this is where we dive into the real, unfiltered recovery stories of ME/CFS and long COVID and other chronic conditions. No fluff, no gatekeeping, no outdated ideas, just what actually works. I am so excited to talk with Danny Mangan, who's over in County Cavan, Ireland, after a multitude of chronic symptoms shut down his life. In 2016, he was out of a job and his new wife was left taking care of all of his self-care needs. I am sending a big shout out to all the MVP caregivers out there. Thank you for all that you do. Danny saw some improvements with some lifestyle changes, but only to hit another wall a few years later. And after feeling stuck in a cycle of feeling okay and then crashing again, he finally broke free after discovering a therapy that actually worked for him. I love conversations like this where we get to explore what truly works for recovery and why even the smallest actions can be absolute game changers. So let's dive in. Danny, so incredible to have you here today. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
So, virtually everyone who comes on this channel, you have had a long, intense, windy journey with this. So, take us, where do you want to take us back to?
Oh, how long have you got? No. So this might be an odd way to start a story, but for me, life was good. It felt good. I loved my work. I loved the people I worked with. I just recently married the woman I love. So yeah, things were good, but there was this piece of the puzzle that was missing. And it would take another 5 years and a move to Ireland to really discover what that missing piece of the puzzle was. But basically, what that culminated in is head to 2016. That's where I had my diagnosis of repetitive strain injury, RSI, in my wrists. And that then went into nerve damage. And it started off in the right wrist, and I pushed through, powered on, and it got incredibly painful. And then where I tried to compensate with the left hand went as well. So that chronic pain basically got to the point where my arms were pretty much useless. They were incapacitated. So my wife, she had to wash me, dress me, and just get me set up on the sofa with my arms on cushions, because just I was in so much pain with my arms at that time.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like a nightmare to go through. And you really did throw me off. I don't think anyone started an interview that way before. Life was good. I was happy. Everything was going well. I liked my job. I'm like, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious because clearly, as time has gone on and this has unraveled, you've come to understand the bigger picture of things. So I'm a bit on the edge of my seat, curious to see what happened from there.
Yeah, exactly. And well, once I had this kind of chronic pain, well, then more symptoms kind of started to manifest themselves. So, in addition to the chronic pain, then came the anxiety, depression, fatigue, insomnia. And I eventually ended up in a symptom state where kind of one symptom was feeding into the next. I had this fatigue, which meant I couldn't live a fulfilled life. So I felt lonely and felt bored. But because I felt so bored, I felt so tired. And round we went in this kind of symptom state at that point. So that was a real challenge, because I almost, I felt like I just became a prisoner in my lounge. My world suddenly shrunk to this room where I was just propped up with my arms on a cushion, thinking, well, how did this happen? But I think what was even harder going through that was seeing the effect that it had on my wife. We hadn't been married that long, so after, 18 months to 2 years of married life, suddenly my wife's a carer, welcome to, welcome to married life. So yeah, that was really tough to see her in that routine of kind of, waking up early, getting me washed, getting me dressed, getting me propped up on the sofa, going off and doing an intense day's work, coming back to me, getting me fed, getting me to put me to bed, sort of. And then the whole thing starts again the next day. And that was really, really hard.
What were you thinking through all of this? It's like you've been snatched from your life. What was going through your head?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just what's happening, because I felt like life was, I was in the fast lane, bombing along, having like the best of times. And, part of my work as well involved some international travel. So my wife and I were traveling to other countries and running courses to train translation teams in software specific for their work. So life was fun, there was adventure. And suddenly, from being in the fast lane, I was now at the side of the road, bonnet open, flames coming out with all these warning lights on, like, what? So it was a big shock. And I think just, again, to see that impact on my wife, I remember many times kind of, with tears in my eyes saying to her, this isn't the man that you married. This isn't me. And this isn't the person that I am. But I just felt so broken. So that was really, really hard to deal with. But at the same time, now looking back, I see that there were warning signs that my body was trying to tell me, look, there's a problem here. The way that I was using my energy just wasn't meeting my needs. So before I had that moment where the body said no and hit me with that kind of chronic pain in my arms, the warning signs were there, but I thought it was normal. Like my version of normal, I realize now really wasn't. So I would experience things like low blood sugar. I realized that my body was absorbing more sugars as I was in this fight or flight situation. Because of that, my blood sugar was all over the place, which meant that this really manifested itself when I would go to people's homes for the first time. And they would kind of like be, oh, hi, Danny, welcome, make yourself at home. And I'd be like, oh, thanks. Where's your food? Like I really needed to know, like, where's your cereal? Do you have a fruit bowl? Where are the bananas? I just had this real anxiety of I needed to eat, because especially as soon as I woke up in the morning, I needed to have food. Otherwise I'd get shaky and my blood sugar would be off. And my worst nightmare was that I would be the first one to wake up in a new home and be like, oh no, there's no one around to ask, where'd you keep your cereal?
This is really interesting. I have never had this conversation with anybody, but on my own CFS journey, I was diagnosed with hypoglycemia and my blood sugar would crash all the time. And I lived with such food anxiety. Everything you're saying, I'm like, I get it. I had food everywhere. It was stashed in my purse. It was in my glove compartment. I needed to have food. I couldn't go anywhere without food on me or knowing where the food was and how to access it. It was terrifying. I was like that for years.
Yeah.
People listening, watching, let us know in the comments. Isn't it just us?
I don't know whether I should confess this as well, but I remember once, I think it was Turin Airport, I got stopped by customs and they opened up my bag and they found pasta. Now, who smuggles pasta into Italy? But it's like, I needed to, I'm even turning Italian. I needed to know that I had the food, It's like, the guy just opens it, like looks at me and he's like, serious?
Oh my goodness. That is so awesome.
That was my normal.
Wow.
Was kind of, that food anxiety because my blood sugar was all over the place. Also migraines. Oh man, like I could function during the day really well. But then in the evenings, bang, you know, the headache, the migraines, the light sensitivity, the noise sensitivity. And I would just, to stop the nausea, I just have to not move an inch, you know, where these migraines would get bad. And they were way too regular. You know, it wasn't good. But also my immunity was shot. I would just pick up so many things. And especially if I was going on holiday, guarantee I would end up sick. Now, in the weeks leading up to it, I would be bulletproof. You know, no kind of influenza, no cold would hit me. But as soon as I was on holiday, bang, I would go down. I mean, I remember one instance where my group of friends were really into cycling. So we decided that we would cycle from London to Paris. And just as we'd come out of South London, I just started going into a cold sweat. I started shivering, but it was this weird where I was kind of hot from the cycling, but cold from this virus or something. You know, I felt so ill, and I'm there just shaking, cycling down to the south coast. And that night, I don't remember actually falling asleep. I feel like I literally just passed out where I was. And then the next morning I wake up, we jump on the ferry. The rest of my friends are on the top deck enjoying the sunshine, and I'm there like below decks just shivering in my lycra, just like another great holiday, you know. But it never kind of dawned on me of like, well, maybe you shouldn't have gone, or maybe you should have turned back, which in fairness is really hard to do when you're on a ferry, unless you're a good swimmer. But that was the norm. Another thing that I used to really look forward to was the annual snowboarding trip. And again, leading up to it, I was fine. But as soon as I got off that chairlift at the top, bang, sinus infection. And there I was kind of at the side of the slope, taking off my gloves, trying to get out tissues with all the base layers. I'm there sweating, goggles fogging up like, oh, another great holiday, you know. And that was just the warning signs. I realize now, just the warning signs where the body's like, oh, we're not good. But yeah, I just pushed through. And then, yeah, in 2016, that's when it really, really hit me hard. And the body's like, nah, had enough of this now. You're no longer safe. I need to stop you in your tracks and get your attention.
So when you were getting all of these symptoms, it started with the pain in the arms and then just started really expanding from there. Were you seeing doctors? Did anyone have any idea what was happening with you? What were they telling you?
Yeah, so I had excellent healthcare support and ones that really cared for me. And I remember having it explained to me about pain being generated in the brain. And the advice that I was given was really motivated, or the goal was to try and calm down the nervous system. So something that was mentioned was to try not to constantly talk about your symptoms, you know, to try and not for it always to be the subject of conversation, so that you're not constantly reinforcing those neural pathways to your wrists, kind of all, you know, asking, you know, how my wrist, how my wrists, how my wrists, how my wrists, you know, to try and just calm the nervous system down. My interpretation of that, though, which I don't think is what they meant, my personality was very all or nothing. So I was like, challenge accepted. I will not talk about my symptoms. And because of that, yeah, I was like, right, I'm not going to talk about my wrists and my arms. But sadly, I would say my reaction to that is that it didn't so much reduce the pain, but increase the shame, because it was something that just I wouldn't talk about. And I feel like there's some of my close friends just didn't realize what I was going through. And maybe there was additional support out there, but I didn't give others the opportunity to give that because I didn't tell them. And that, again, is just another indication of where the way that I was dealing with things just wasn't good for my health.
Okay, there's so much to unpack there, but I cannot move forward. My head has been exploding. I'm sorry, did you say a doctor told you all of this? The brain and the nervous system?
So I want to get this right, because it's either occupational therapist, physiotherapist, or all of the above. So Let's say occupational therapist.
Because once again, you're like, well, first of all, it was like life was really good and I was really happy when I got in well. I'm like, what? Now you're like, what were the doctors saying? And I've heard the same similar response probably 200 times. You're like, my experience with the healthcare system was very good. They knew exactly what was going on. What is going on here? Like, that's really... Was this in Ireland that you were seeing this, we'll say, occupational therapist that had this information? Because virtually no one gets this information from the conventional medical system.
I know. No, this was actually part of my work. So from going, I basically went from the office to go see this occupational therapist who helped explain this to me. And then from there, I went straight home because they just immediately signed me off work, which was the right call.
Wow.
Which was the right call. They were spot on, but I was a bit like, huh? But I'm always used to just powering on through and, oh, okay.
I am just going to hijack this interview. I'm going to try and stop myself, but I just cannot even understand. Like, it's so shocking to me, everything that you're saying. Like, I'm thinking of my doctor who I went to, I could barely get out of bed, and I asked for time off work. And she's like, how am I going to sign any paperwork? There's nothing wrong with you. Like, you need to go back to work. So this is so incredible. I'm having this vision of the next few years interviewing more and more people where they're getting this support and information that they need from their doctor, getting the time off. I'm so happy that you had that experience. But the other thing that I said that I wanted to unpack is a really interesting point that I've never heard anyone explain it this way, because we do talk a lot about not focusing on your symptoms, not giving them attention, not talking about it. But that's a really important insight, that if it turns into something that you feel like you have to hide, then what? So how do you find, I guess it's going to be an individual thing, but being aware of that and finding a happy medium between fixation and hiding and shame.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can feel that in me right now, just how much that resonates with me. Yeah, it's really hard. And I think you're always trying to do your best, and the people around you are always trying to give the best advice that they know as well. So, everyone's kind of rooting for you, but sometimes we just need a bit of extra support and guidance, and sometimes we have to wait for that. Or maybe it's there, but we just don't quite hear it. So sometimes patience just is involved with these kind of recoveries.
And a good reminder that even if your healthcare professionals are up to date on the latest science and can talk to you about the nervous system and the brain and all of that, everyone's going to explain it a little bit differently. And we always have to trust our gut on, like, does this feel right for me? Is the approach they're telling me, do I need to adapt this a little bit? Because even, if it's the correct information for you, it can still be problematic if the way you're going about it, the way they've told you to go about it, it isn't really working.
And I think I was still probably in a bit of shock, because to me, the diagnosis of, repetitive strain injury, RSI, nerve damage, to me, what I heard was, Mr. Mangan, you have been defeated by a wireless mouse and keyboard. And I'm like, what? That doesn't seem right. That makes me sound weak. And that just doesn't click. It just seems shocking to me. And yeah, I mean, like, say, for example, if you don't mind me asking you a question, Raelan, fellow snowboarder, right? Well, you'll love this next question. Have you ever caught an edge?
Oh my goodness. Sometimes in the past, I'd come home with whiplash because I caught so many edges and fell and snapped my head back hard so many times. Yeah.
Okay, so, I don't want to trigger you here with these questions, but
all good. Fire away.
If you catch your front edge, what's the initial reaction of your body if you catch your front edge on your snowboard?
Put your hands down.
So what do you typically wear on your wrists?
Nothing.
What?
Well, gloves.
Raelan, come on. No, you don't have wrist guards?
I don't.
All right, well, up to you if you want to leave that bit in.
Okay, it sounds like we have to have another conversation offline about my snowboarding safety. Okay, let's for the sake of this conversation, I wear wrist guards.
So, like, I wasn't the best snowboarder, so I would clip an edge and wrists would go down, and my wrist took a hammering. That's why I would wear wrist guards, because it would be like bang, or like I'd fall backward and the wrist would go down, or even just pushing yourself up so you didn't get a wet bum. Do you know what I mean? You're always pushing yourself up, and so my wrists were being hammered all day. And then I'd go to bed, sleep, wake up and do it all again the next day. So how can the wrists survive being like hammered into ice, but, click, 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 or a little bit of right click can bring you down? So I was just in a bit of shock of like, that doesn't make sense. I feel like that doesn't really reflect my physical ability, So yeah, that was hard.
So what happened from there? Did you start trying to implement different recovery strategies, or what was next?
Yeah, so a good friend of ours recommended making smaller changes. So that was something they put to us. Are there small changes you can make in life, in your lifestyle, to see if that helps? And we tried that, but we just couldn't quite find the appropriate actions to make a difference to my health. So then it went to, okay, I think we need to make a major change, because at that point as well, my brain was catastrophizing and I was thinking, okay, nerve damage today, tomorrow it's going to be ME, CFS, and then cancer. That's where my head went. So I thought, okay, I need a major change here. So made the really difficult decision to leave our work. The accommodation we had came with our work, so we left that as well, moved in with family. And then we thought, okay, before we sign up for a tenancy, before we rent a place, let's go visit family in Australia, which we did for a couple of months. And that was a real tonic, just to feel the heat of the sun, to be outdoors all the time, enjoying that outdoor lifestyle. I slept a lot. And yeah, just to, we'd spend the morning in a rainforest and then you could be by the afternoon, you're at the beach. I mean, Queensland, amazing place. And that really helped, just spending a lot of time in nature. That really topped us up and just felt like I could really relax, and just, it was really calming. So that helped. And then within a year, I would say my symptoms had eased dramatically, even to the point where I was able to help with a scaffolding project, which was just such a win for me, because I was like, yes, like these wrists have got something in them. Like, take that, wireless mouse. Like, yeah, that was a huge win. Yeah, that was good.
I'm just imagining all the silent conversations you had in your head with your wireless mouse.
It's a scary place to go, I'll be honest.
Perplexing. I hear you. What? How is this what's happening? All right. So change of environment, change of routine, change of lifestyle. These things all started to make you feel better. Was that all the way there, or were there more things you needed to do?
No. So then 2021 comes along, and I had what we affectionately refer to as my mini burnout. So it wasn't as bad as the 2016 nerve pain, but in 2021, I just one day couldn't go to work. It was like somebody just pulled the plug, and I wasn't really happy and I wasn't really sad. I was nothing. I just felt numb. And it was this really, really weird sensation where I felt like I just became a spectator to my life. Like I was just looking at this person. That's the only way I can describe it. There was just this complete disconnect. And again, I was like, how has this happened? From that awful experience that I had back in 2016, I thought I was really good at saying no to things. I thought I'd learnt my lesson, but here I am experiencing this mini burnout, which, was really tough. Financial pressure on our family. I couldn't work for a couple of months and just didn't want to go out. I had no motivation, no drive. As I said, just like someone just pulled the plug on me. But then we went to see some friends of ours, and we were there chatting with our friends, and they said, have you ever thought about some therapy? Have you ever thought about getting some support with your emotional health? And at that point, I thought, I'll try anything. I really am quite lost. And I appreciated the recommendation and how it was recommended to me. It was really kindly done. And I said, yeah, sure. And that's when I realized the piece of the puzzle that was missing, that, it was my emotional health, caring for that, which was key. So I started doing Mickel therapy, and that helped me to realize that even though I thought I was good at saying no to things, I could be a little bit better. And that by setting good, healthy boundaries, that would keep my symptoms at bay. But what was even more interesting for me was not so much improving saying no, but improving saying yes. Because I was very aware of trying to help others and to fulfill their needs and to offer them support, but I wasn't really looking after myself. So that's where I realized I had to say yes to a lot more to meet my needs and to make sure I was leading a life that was fulfilling and using my skills and abilities. So I decided to schedule recreation, and I became quite protective over that time that this is for me. And I signed up for some courses, which I did just because. And it felt so good to it felt so good to say that, oh, why have you done that course? Just because, And I think sometimes when we do a course or we start a hobby, there is that temptation to ask, oh, so are you having a career change? Or, oh, is this a side hustle? Or, oh, will you be selling these online?
Yeah.
Almost like you have to justify why you've started something. And it's like, you can't just invest in yourself, but you have to make sure it pays back for itself, if that makes sense.
It does. And come at it with an overachiever approach where I'm going to be the best and I'm going to teach classes on it. I'm going to open my own shop. I'll have a YouTube channel.
Exactly.
It can't be fun. This can't be fun. Yeah.
Oh, heaven forbid it was just fun, and that was it. It was that green light to go have fun and to do things just because. And it was proof of life. I just needed to prove to my own body that it was alive and living. And when it had that, it was like, yeah, great, some more of this, please. And it just rewarded me with more energy. My health improved. So yeah, I was really grateful for the Mickel therapy that I received, and had an excellent therapist that really helped me.
That's incredible. And I hear this type of thing, as I'm sure you can guess, quite a bit on this channel, people talking about their journeys and these being the things that get them well. But 99 point some percent of the population has never heard this. It doesn't think that these things are all related to health. I mean, before I started this channel and before my own journey, I certainly never heard any of this. And I can see how it can be dismissed, or there's no money to be made there, really. I mean, it's not a pill or a surgery to sell. So like, what major advertising campaign or company is going to get behind it and open clinics? And it breaks my heart to think about the millions of the people in the world, potentially billions, who are facing various health conditions that could significantly improve by making these sorts of changes. And it's so many more conditions than we're realizing. And we're starting to see, I've talked to some doctors that say, experts, that there's no condition that exists where this sort of approach and working with your nervous system and your emotions and your brain doesn't impact your progress.
Yeah. And I don't know if you found this, but I feel like when ones discover, say, that, the mind-body connection, that there's almost this part of them, this intuition in them that's like, yeah, that makes sense. I kind of knew there was something else. Almost that vindication of like, I knew it, So I feel like many out there do have that kind of intuition of there is something more. And that's why it's so important to talk about it, and why your work's so appreciated with channels like this, to be able to kind of lift the veil on these things and to talk about them so that people can have hope that there is a way out of their symptoms through different methods, different tools, different techniques.
And I think in addition to it resonating, to it, something inside you saying, yes, this makes sense, it also gives us permission to find joy, to take care of ourselves, to have boundaries, to spend some time in nature. Because when you realize how it's connected to your physical and mental health, you're like, well, it's not just a nice to have. Like, this is, I got to do these things. It's okay. I'm allowed. I can take a break.
I like that it's not nice to have. It is just part of being human. This is how we work, and we need this.
So was that it for you? You got to this place and you sort of figured out the bigger connection and
Yeah, I think I was so overwhelmed by this awakening and this new information, and so grateful for it as well, because I just didn't want this cycle to continue, you know, good for a couple of years, then burn out, then good for a couple of years, and then burn out. So that's when I thought, you know, I'd really like to train in Mickel therapy. So I tried to go down that avenue, but the training wasn't available at the time. So then I started this search to find a practitioner course that resonated with my core values and beliefs. And I tell you, it was hard. I really struggled. And I was just going down all these different rabbit holes, like trying to find it. And when I came along, Clare Caldwell, I was just so grateful. And as well, for her to be head practitioner and head of training at Mickel Therapy in, I believe it was 2012. This is someone who can relate to the therapy I've received and can have that insight into, you know, what I've been through. So that meant a lot to me. And then I started learning more about the Mind Body Reconnect that Clare founded, and said, yeah, okay, sign me up. I want to train in this, because it just really, really resonates with me.
Claire's incredible. You might be aware I've interviewed her. I can link it here if people want to check it out. But yeah, I really do like and respect her. Do you find, I'm so grateful for this journey of continually learning or continuing to learn about all of this, even though technically my health journey might be past, because everything I learned helps me not only understand things better, even more, you know, because every month I'll talk to you or someone who will help me, a light bulb will go off. I'm like, oh, that's why that was happening. And it also gives me the tools to live my own life moving forward in a much better way. All completely aside from potentially, you know, working with and helping other people. I just feel like it's such a gift, even though I think we do it, we think for other people, it ends up being a really big gift for ourselves as well.
Totally agree. And you know, we're complex creatures. There's always so much more to learn. And just when you think you're like, oh, yeah, I know about this, then boom, it suddenly explodes into all these other avenues. And you're like, oh, okay. And it's fascinating. You know, if you love this kind of thing, then, yeah, there's so much out there. And it is a gift to learn more about, you know, how we're made, because, yeah, it's pretty incredible, pretty incredible.
So specifically from your Mind Body Reconnect training, you know, what benefits did you see while doing it or from doing it?
Yeah, coming from a training background, I realized very early on that if you want to know something well, teach it, because you kind of are forced to understand your subject well, but also you get all these questions that come back that you're like, oh, okay, I didn't even think about that. Let me look into it and come back to you. So for me, going through the Mind Body Reconnect, or MBR training, it just really cemented my own recovery, because I was now exposed to these tools and techniques which use the latest scientific research, which use the wealth of knowledge that Clare Caldwell has, which I'm sure that your viewers will see from the interview, and also her insights from working and training with Dr. Gabor Mate. All of this kind of being drawn in was amazing. And what I really appreciate is the support, both during that training, but then also afterward. And I realized, you know, I really needed that. And I think that is something which is really special. It's just that constant support and training that we receive as MBR practitioners. So yeah, so grateful that I finally found Clare after this huge search of like, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. Oh.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few people who have taken, you know, her program, or coaches who have trained under her, and I don't think I've yet to hear a negative thing. People just speak really highly of her, and everyone who comes on the channel and speaks about what they've learned in the program just, you know, is right in line with the science, resonates, is in line with what all the people I'm interviewing are saying. So yeah, a lot of respect for her and everyone who is coaching based on her program. So do you have any key takeaways from your MBR training that you could share with people watching and listening?
Yeah, I think it could be diluted back to trying to find appropriate responses to the messages your body is sending you. And often these responses don't have to be massive. They're actually small changes can have quite a big impact on our health. For example, if you've got someone who's at work and they're in the office and they're feeling really bored, well, one option is that they could put in their notice and move country and hey, they're no longer bored. But that may cause other issues. Perhaps a more appropriate action that all the body needed was for us to get up and go grab a coffee and maybe try a different coffee shop today, just to mix things up and keep things fun. Maybe that's an appropriate action. Or say you've got someone who is at home and once a week the neighbor has a guitar lesson and it's so frustrating, hearing this noise. And so what do? Well, I put the house up for sale and get a camper van, and then I never have to worry about neighbors because I can always just move, right? Now, that might be an appropriate response. That might be what you need. But at the same time, it could be something else. It could be, well, actually, I'll just change my schedule so I'm not in, so I'm not getting stressed at that time of the week. Or perhaps I'll treat myself to some noise-cancelling headphones and rediscover my love for 90s trance music during that time. Or maybe I just need to go talk to my neighbor and just have a chat with them, a kind chat. And that's where it's sometimes nice just to, something which I really appreciated from my therapy was just to have someone who had that perspective to zoom out a little bit and say, well, how about, could you try this or try that? And when we find that appropriate action, our body is just kind of goes, great, you've understood me. That's brilliant. I don't need to alert you and shout at you with symptoms. We're on the same page here. That's great.
Yeah, that's such an important point because sometimes it feels like we are powerless and there's nothing we can change and we're stuck in these stressful circumstances. I need a job. I can't move. What am I supposed to do? And someone once suggested, I think therapist is the ideal option, but if for some reason that's not feasible right now, even just thinking of it as a close friend, someone you care about, or a relative going through what you're going through, would you say to them, you have no options? There is nothing you can change here. You are stuck. When you're detached from it, when you can zoom out, you can typically start to problem solve a little bit better. So yeah, it's everyone I interview, it is for the most part, a bunch of small things, small changes over time. That's what got them where they're going. So now you do MBR work. So can you tell us a bit about that and what your hope is that will come from this work?
Yeah, I think for me, I really hope that the shame and embarrassment that comes with reaching out for emotional support, that shame and embarrassment continues to wane. That ones don't leave it too long before reaching out for a bit of support and a bit of help. Because sometimes we can get to the stage in life where we think, who am I? What do I like? What do I dislike? Am I an arty person, or, am I a bookworm? Do I prefer being by the beach or in a forest? And I just don't know because I've been looking after everyone else and not finding out what I like or meeting my needs. So I hope that continues to change where ones can reach out and get help. And another part of it is sometimes there can be shame associated with it being a mind-body connection issue. If someone has a couple of months off work because they broke their rock climbing, it's like, oh, okay, well, let me bring you around some hot dinners and, massage your feet, you poor thing. Whereas if someone says, yeah, I had a couple of months off work because of a mind-body connection issue, well, that sometimes isn't as acceptable. And you think, well, as we know, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it's the same switch from the brain. It still hurt. It feels the same. The pain is real. And you never want to diminish someone's suffering as if like, oh, it was just a mind-body connection thing. It still really hurt. And it feels the same as a physical injury. So again, with talking about it, with helping ones appreciate this mind-body connection aspect, to try and just take away that shame or embarrassment and not leaving it too long before we reach out and get some help.
This is incredible. I'm so glad we've connected. I have enjoyed every minute of talking to you. So much helpful information here. I want to hire you. I think anything that anyone can do to have a little bit more Danny in their life has just got to be a good thing. So, of course, we'll link all of your information and contacts in the description. So people watching, listening, really encourage you, take a moment, check it out. Danny's clearly a great guy. He's been through his own journey. He gets it. Lots of empathy, understanding, and support. And the great thing is that not so long ago, we did have to do this on our own, but now we don't. There's so much help out there. So I really hope, I have no doubt that you'll get a lot of people reaching out to you. I really hope that you do, because yeah, it's just such a better journey when you have someone to walk through it with you. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, I'm going to link also as well your YouTube channel. I know you started, so people keep an eye on that. I have no doubt there is going to be a ton of great stuff coming there as well. So another great free resource for people who are facing these conditions. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to the people watching and listening. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you, or I hope Danny sees you in some of his videos on his channel.